When Manchester City sold a 21-year-old Englishman to Middlesbrough for just 1.2 million euros, for the most part he was viewed as just not going to ever be good enough to play at the highest level in football. He had some good loan spells while at City, but he also had some really disappointing ones, not even managing to rack up 400 minutes for Bournemouth, who were in the Championship. Yet after 6 glorious months at Middlesbrough, Aston Villa bought him from Middlesbrough for just 10 million euros, and he is quickly turning into one of the most exciting and consistent players for Aston Villa, not a year after he was seen as a fail for Man City. He is quickly shocking everyone that counted him out by each performance that he plays. But how did Morgan Rogers improve so drastically, and just what made you haven't already? And let's get into it. Morgan Rogers was born in July 2002, and Rogers came up through the ranks at West Bromwich Albion, joining the academy at just 9 years old. He made his debut for West Brom in 2019 during an FA Cup game, and while soon after that Manchester City snapped him up in August of that year after being so impressed by his potential and the glimpses and obvious talent he showed at West Brom. Although he didn't break into Man City's first team, which I mean isn't really a surprise to anyone, he spent some time on loan at several clubs including Lincoln City, where he made a real impact for the club by winning the EFL Young Player of the Month award in the 2021 season and making 29 appearances for the club, scoring 6 goals and grabbing a further 4 assists for Lincoln City. Other loan spells at Bournemouth, where he managed only 17 appearances and 1 goal in just 392 minutes for Bournemouth. That was kind of a failed loan spell, but then he went again on another loan, this time to Blackpool, where he managed 22 appearances in just 6 months and played some very good football. While these loan spells gave him some valuable game time, it wasn't quite the move that really turned heads, like his move to Middlesbrough. In 2023, Manchester City decided, you know what, they need to cut their losses on Morgan Rogers. They don't see him ever becoming that good of a player, so they decided to sell him to Middlesbrough for just 1.2 million euros. And in the Championship at Middlesbrough, the then 21-year-old Morgan Rogers had a bit of a slow start, only getting his first goal contribution in his 9th Championship appearance, but eventually he came alive in November and December, especially during their impressive EFL Cup run that saw them get all the way to the semi-finals, where they would end up losing 6-2 on aggregate to Chelsea, even seeing Rogers score a goal in Stamford Bridge. Morgan Rogers would end up finishing as the EFL Cup top goal scorer by scoring 5 goals in the competition. And by the end of 2023, from a failed wonder kid in June 2023, he looked like a special player by the end of 2023. His form had picked up with some goals and assists coming in at crucial moments, and him being clearly one of the best young players in the Championship. Morgan Rogers had himself 7 goals and 9 assists in just 6 months with Middlesbrough, and while his sudden drastic rise did not go unnoticed, with so many clubs looking at Morgan Rogers during the January transfer window, and eventually Aston Villa came calling, securing him for their Premier League squad by paying 9.4 million euros for the Englishman just 6 months after Middlesbrough paid just 1.2. And while Morgan Rogers in his first few months at Aston Villa, the 21-year-old did somewhat struggle a little bit. I mean, he had some poor lackluster performances, and he only managed to get his first goal contribution on the 3rd of April in a 4-1 loss to former club in Manchester City. But after that goal contribution, as he tends to do, he went on a really impressive run, scoring in 3 out of his next 4 Premier League games. And this season, well, Morgan Rogers has kept getting better and better with each performance for Aston Villa under Unai Emery. Now, if you take a quick glance at his stats so far this season, you would think, well, what are you on about? He's played 6 games and only got 2 assists in a very good Villa team that has lost just 1 game. He should have better numbers than that. And that's where his stats can be misleading. To me, Rogers has been arguably one of Villa's best players this season, with some amazing performances against Arsenal, an amazing performance against West Ham, Wolves where he got 2 assists, a really good Champions League performance against Young Boys. He has been simply incredible for Aston Villa, and their stats do not back that up. Morgan Rogers is an attacking midfielder who's versatile enough to play on the left, up front, or even out wide on the right, and he's at his best when he's driving his team forward and creating chances. Off the eye test and off stats, he's a real threat in the final third, with a massive 96th percentile ranking for chance creation and an expected assists per 90 of 0.25. That means he's constantly setting up his teammates in great positions, and his 2.45 successful take-ons per 90, which is the 80th percentile, that makes him a nightmare for defenders on one-on-one situations, or it makes him a nightmare when he's running towards the penalty area full head of steam. He's got a decent goal threat too, with 0.23 goals per 90, and his progressive passing, which is 88.33%, shows he's also looking to push his team forward consistently. consistently. And to his contributions defensively, especially with clearances and blocks, you can see why he is such an asset for Aston Villa and why he is such a special player, shocking so many people this season. Now, all of that being said, there obviously are areas where Rodgers has still room to grow. His passing accuracy and his ball retention, although off the eye test they don't seem to be an issue, based off of his stats they are kind of pretty low. He's also not as involved as you would expect for a player of his talents in terms of getting assists and getting goals, and he has fewer touches in key areas and a low ranking for progressive passes received, meaning that his movement isn't outstanding. And while he's quick, tricky, and has some very impressive physicality at times, in the aerial duel department he does definitely need some work to be a complete player. But with his natural ability to create and influence games, in my eyes there is no doubt that Rodgers is one to watch as he continues to develop at Aston Villa under Unai Emery, and he has been progressing at the rate of knots in these past 8 to 9 months, and I can't wait to see where he will be in 3 years time with this progression. What a player Morgan Rodgers is.